She pressed the glossy black and white ultrasound into my hands, smiling so wide her cheeks trembled. "Isn't she beautiful?" my sister whispered. At first, all I saw were shadows, blurred shapes, a tiny curve like a crescent moon. Then my eyes adjusted and my breath vanished because I knew that image. I knew it the way you recognize your own reflection in a dark window, instantly, instinctively, with a deep, sickening certainty. The date printed at the top, the clinic name, and the small handwritten note in the corner that I had written myself months ago. My fingers began to shake so hard the paper rattled. I looked up at her, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. And that's when she said it. "Isn't she yours?" Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had trusted family with their whole heart, only to watch that trust collapse like glass under a hammer. People always say betrayal hurts most when it comes from strangers. That's not true. The deepest wounds come from the hands that once held yours. And mine? Mine came from the person I loved most in the world, my sister. Her name was Alina, and growing up, she was my entire universe. We weren't just siblings, we were survival partners. Our parents worked constantly, always tired, always worried about money, so we raised each other in the quiet spaces between their absence. We shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams, even heartbreak. She was the wild one, fearless, loud, magnetic, the kind of person who walked into a room and instantly owned it. I was the opposite, quiet, careful, the one who thought before speaking. But somehow we balanced each other perfectly. People used to joke that we were two halves of the same soul. I believed that until the day I realized she had been quietly carving pieces out of mine. The first crack appeared when I was 27. That was the year everything in my life felt like it was finally coming together. I had a stable job, my own apartment, and a fiancé who I thought was my forever. His name was Daniel. He was gentle, attentive, patient, the kind of man who remembered small details, like how I hated cold coffee or how I couldn't sleep without a nightlight. He made me feel safe, and after a lifetime of instability, safety felt like love. When he proposed, I cried so hard I couldn't even say yes at first. Alina screamed louder than anyone at the engagement dinner. She hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. "I'm so happy for you," she kept saying, over and over. Too many times, actually. But I didn't notice that back then, because why would I? She was my sister. The three of us became inseparable after that. We had weekend dinners together, movie nights, group vacations. Sometimes Daniel and Alina would gang up on me jokingly, teasing me about how serious I was. I thought it was sweet, the way they bonded. It made me happy. It made me feel like my two worlds were blending into one perfect future. I never once imagined that while I was busy building that future, they were quietly rewriting it without me. The second crack appeared 6 months later. I was late. At first, I blamed stress. Work had been exhausting and wedding planning was overwhelming. But then came the nausea, the dizziness, the strange, overwhelming fatigue that clung to my bones. I took a test in the bathroom at work. 2 pink lines. I remember staring at them for so long that my eyes blurred. I wasn't scared. I was ecstatic. Daniel and I had talked about kids someday, but we never planned for it to happen so soon. Still, it felt like destiny, like the universe was rewarding us for all the years of struggle. I couldn't wait to tell him. But before I told Daniel, I told Alina, because she had always been the first person I shared everything with. Always. She cried when I told her. Not happy tears. Not exactly. They were intense, almost overwhelming. She hugged me tightly, pressing her face into my shoulder. "I'll always be here for you," she whispered. I thought it was a promise. I didn't know it was a warning. A week later, I had my first ultrasound appointment. Daniel couldn't make it because of a last-minute work emergency, so Alina came instead. She held my hand during the scan, squeezed my fingers when we heard the heartbeat for the first time. That rapid, tiny rhythm filled the room. It sounded like hope, like life, like a future that finally belonged to me. After the appointment, I wrote a tiny note in the corner of the ultrasound photo. My little miracle. I gave a copy to Alina because she begged for one. She wanted to keep it so I can remember this moment forever. I smiled. Of course she could have it. She was my sister. But something changed after that day. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Daniel started coming home late more often. He seemed distracted, distant. And Alina, she became strangely protective, overly involved. She insisted on attending every doctor appointment. She bought baby clothes before I even finished my first trimester. She kept saying things like, "This baby is going to change everything." At the time, I thought it meant it in a good way. I didn't realize she meant everything for her, not for me. The night everything shattered started like a normal evening. I came home early from work, exhausted, hoping to surprise Daniel with dinner. But when I unlocked the apartment door, I heard laughter. From the bedroom, two voices, his and hers. I remember standing frozen in the hallway, my brain refusing to process what my ears already knew. The laughter stopped. Silence fell. Then I heard a whisper, Alina's whisper, soft, intimate, familiar. I think she's starting to suspect something. And Daniel's reply came like a knife sliding slowly into my chest. It doesn't matter. Soon, it'll all be over. I pushed the bedroom door open, and what I saw inside was the moment my entire life split into before and after. The bedroom lights were dim, casting long shadows across the walls. For a second, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Daniel was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirt half buttoned, hair messy, and Alina? She was standing in front of him, her hands resting on his shoulders, her face so close to his that there was no space left for denial, no space left for misunderstanding, no space left for hope. Time didn't slow down. It stopped completely. I remember the sound of my heartbeat roaring in my ears so loudly it drowned out everything else. The air felt thick, heavy, like I was trying to breathe underwater. Daniel was the first to notice me. His eyes widened. Then came something worse than shock. Guilt. Cold, immediate, unmistakable guilt. "Listen," he started, but the word never finished because Alina turned around, and when she saw me standing there, she didn't look surprised. She didn't even look ashamed. She looked calm, almost relieved. I waited for her to panic, to apologize, to cry, to say it was a mistake, but she didn't. She simply exhaled, like someone who had been holding their breath for too long. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess you were going to find out eventually." Those words hit harder than anything else. Not "I'm sorry," not "it's not what it looks like," just acceptance, like this moment had been expected, planned. I felt something inside me crack open. Not a loud shatter, not a dramatic explosion, just a quiet, irreversible break. "How long?" I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away. Daniel rubbed his face, avoiding my eyes. Alina answered instead. 8 months. 8 months. My knees nearly buckled. That was before the engagement party, before the wedding planning, before the ultrasound, before everything. My stomach twisted violently, not just from betrayal, but from a deeper, more terrifying realization. You knew, I said slowly, staring at her. You knew when I told you I was pregnant. Her expression didn't change. She just nodded. Yes. One word, no hesitation, no regret, just truth. The room spun. I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. You held my hand at the appointment, I whispered. You listened to the heartbeat with me. Yes. You cried when I told you. Yes. Each answer was like another nail sealing a coffin around my heart. Finally, I asked the question that was already burning inside me. Why? For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt, not shame, something darker, resentment. You've always had everything, she said quietly. I stared at her, stunned. What are you talking about? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You were the good one, the responsible one, the one everyone trusted, the one who always got the stable life, the stable job, the stable relationships. Her voice grew sharper. Meanwhile, I was always the messy one, the one people expected to fail. I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. That's not true. We both struggled. No, you struggled and then you won. Silence filled the room like thick fog. Then she said the words that would haunt me forever. I was tired of watching you get everything I wanted. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. This isn't about competition. You're my sister. She looked at me with something cold in her gaze. That's exactly why it hurts more. Daniel finally spoke, his voice shaky. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I turned to him slowly. Then how was it supposed to happen? He swallowed hard. At first, it was just emotional. We spent time together. We talked. She understood me in ways you didn't. The words stabbed deeper than any knife. You mean she agreed with you more, I said bitterly. He didn't answer because he knew it was true. Then came the moment that truly broke me. Alina crossed her arms and said calmly, "And now you know everything." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean, everything?" She exchanged a glance with Daniel, a silent look, one that told me there was still more, much more. Daniel took a deep breath. "There's something you need to understand." My chest tightened. "What?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "The baby." My entire body went rigid. "What about the baby?" He hesitated. Too long, way too long, and that hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. "The baby might not be mine." The word slammed at me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. My ears rang. My hands went numb. "What did you just say?" I whispered. Alina stepped forward, and this time there was no softness left in her voice. "No," she said calmly, "you heard him correctly." My mind spiraled. None of this made sense. Daniel and I had been together for years. I had never been with anyone else. Never. So there was only one explanation. And it was so horrifying my brain refused to form it until she said it out loud. "The baby," she said, placing her hand on Daniel's chest, "is his, but it's mine too." I stared at her, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to exist inside this nightmare. Then she delivered the final blow. We switched the test results. The world went silent, utterly silent, as if reality itself had stopped. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. "What do you mean, switched?" I whispered. Her lips curved into a small, chilling smile.
I mean, she said slowly, the child you believe is growing inside you was never yours to begin with. My heart stopped because suddenly every strange behavior, every appointment she insisted on attending, every moment she hovered near me, every time she watched me with that unreadable expression, all of it made sense in the most horrifying way possible. And then she said the sentence that destroyed the last piece of my soul. We've been planning this from the beginning.
Her words didn't just break me, they raced me. For a moment, I couldn't feel my body at all, like my soul had stepped outside of it to escape what I was hearing. We've been planning this from the very beginning. The sentence echoed in my mind over and over, each repetition slicing deeper than the last. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't reacting at all. I was shutting down. Daniel stepped toward me, his voice desperate. "Please, you need to listen. It's not what it sounds like." I slowly lifted my eyes to his. "How," I whispered hoarsely, "could this possibly sound like anything else?" He faltered, because there was no answer to that, no explanation that could soften what they had done. Alina, however, remained steady, calm, cold, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. "We didn't mean to hurt you at first," she said. At first. Those two words made my stomach twist violently. "At first?" I repeated. She nodded. "It started when Daniel told me he wasn't ready to be a father with you." My heart clenched. I turned toward him, stunned. "You said you were happy," I whispered. His eyes filled with guilt. "I thought I was," he said weakly. "But when it became real, I panicked." I felt something inside me crumble into dust. Years of love, years of trust, gone just like that. "And that's when you decided to have an affair with my sister?" I asked. He shook his head quickly. "No, it wasn't like that." But Alina cut in. "Yes, it was." Her bluntness felt like another slap. "We grew close while you were busy planning the wedding. He confided in me. I listened, and somewhere along the way, feelings happened." Feelings. Such a harmless word. Such a monstrous reality. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold together the pieces of my collapsing world. "But what does that have to do with the baby?" I asked, my voice trembling. For the first time, Alina hesitated. Just for a second. Then she exhaled. "I was pregnant first." The room tilted. "What?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I found out 2 weeks before you told me you were expecting." My brain struggled to process this. You were pregnant?" She looked down briefly. "I miscarried." Silence fell heavy between us. For a split second, compassion tried to rise in my chest, but it died instantly when she continued. And that's when I realized something. Her eyes met mine again, sharp, unforgiving. If you had a baby with Daniel, I would lose him forever. The cruelty of that logic made my skin crawl. "So instead," I whispered, "you decided to steal my child?" Her jaw tightened. "I didn't see it as stealing," she said coldly. "I saw it as correcting something that should have been mine all along." Those words shattered something inside me
permanently. There was no coming back from this, no repairing this, no understanding this. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was obsession. It was entitlement. It was madness. Daniel's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. "It got out of control," he said, his voice cracking. "We never planned for it to go this far." I laughed, a hollow, broken sound that didn't feel human. "Then tell me," I said, my voice shaking, "how exactly did it go this far?" He swallowed hard. "When you went in for your first blood tests, Alina knew someone who worked at the clinic." My stomach dropped. "No." She nodded calmly. "We switched the sample labels." I felt like I was going to vomit. "You're lying," I whispered. But deep down, I knew she wasn't, because suddenly everything made sense. Every strange phone call, every appointment she insisted on attending, every time she left the room to check something. All of it. "You made me believe," my voice broke, "that I was pregnant." She shook her head slightly. "No," she said quietly. "You were pregnant." I froze. "What?" Daniel looked at the floor. "She's telling the truth," he said softly. My heart pounded painfully. "Then what are you saying?" Alina's next words hit like a hammer. "You were pregnant, but the baby you were carrying was never yours biologically." The room spun violently. I grabbed the wall to stay upright. "That's impossible," I whispered. She took a step closer, and her voice dropped to a chilling calm. "You trusted us. You trusted him. And you trusted me." Then she said the unthinkable. "The night you got drunk at your engagement party." My breath stopped. "You passed out early," she continued, "and Daniel didn't take you home right away." I stared at her in horror. "No, no, no." My mind screamed in denial, but my memory betrayed me. That night had always been fuzzy, fragments, laughter, music, then darkness, and waking up the next morning feeling strangely sore. I had blamed the alcohol, blamed exhaustion, blamed stress. "Stop," I whispered, my voice trembling violently. But she didn't, because she had waited too long to finally say it. "Daniel switched places," she said quietly, "and I," her voice didn't shake, not even a little, "took what was supposed to be mine." The world shattered. Not cracked, not broken, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I sank to the floor. My body couldn't hold me anymore. My mind couldn't contain the horror. My soul couldn't survive the truth. I wasn't just betrayed. I had been violated, used, manipulated by the two people I trusted most. And then, through the ringing in my ears, I heard Alina say one final, devastating sentence. "We thought you'd never find out."
I don't remember deciding to scream. It just happened. A sound tore out of my throat, so raw and animalistic that it didn't even feel human. It felt like something ancient, like grief itself had found a voice. My hands pressed against my ears, but I could still hear their words echoing inside my skull, repeating over and over, like a cruel recording I couldn't turn off. We switched the samples. You trusted us. I took what was supposed to be mine. Every sentence struck like a hammer, every memory twisted into something unrecognizable. I rocked forward on the floor, gasping for air. I trusted you, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Not to Daniel, not even to both of them, just to her, my sister. My entire life, she had been the one constant I never questioned, and now she stood in front of me like a stranger wearing her face. For the first time, her expression shifted, not to remorse, not to guilt, but to something uncomfortable, almost defensive. "You think this was easy for me?" she said quietly. I looked up at her, stunned. "Easy?" My voice cracked into disbelief. "You destroyed my life." Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand what it's like to always be second," she snapped, "to always be the extra piece in someone else's story." I stared at her in horror. "So your solution was to erase me from my own life?" Her eyes hardened. "No," she said, "to take the life that should have been mine." Daniel finally stepped forward, his face pale. "This went too far," he said, his voice shaking. "We should have told you sooner." I laughed again, that broken, hollow sound that no longer felt like it belonged to me. "Told me what?" I asked bitterly. "That you planned to steal my child and replace me?" His shoulders slumped. "We thought, eventually, you'd move on." Move on? Those two words ignited something inside me, a sudden blazing fury that cut through the numbness. "Move on?" I repeated slowly, rising unsteadily to my feet. My hands trembled, but not from weakness anymore, from rage. "You drugged me. You violated me. You manipulated medical records. You lied for months, and you thought I would just move on?" Neither of them answered, because there was no answer. Only silence, heavy, guilty, damning. For a moment I thought I might collapse again, but instead something inside me hardened. A cold clarity began to replace the chaos, the shock, the devastation. It didn't hurt less, it hurt differently, sharper, focused. I wiped my tears slowly, and when I looked at them again, my voice was steady. "How long?" I asked. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "How long," I repeated, "before you plan to tell me the truth?" Alina answered calmly, "After the baby was born." The words hit like ice water. "After?" I whispered. She nodded. "Yes, once everything was legally settled." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, legally?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Daniel's eyes, but Alina didn't hesitate. "We were going to petition for custody." The room tilted again. "You're insane!" I breathed. Her voice stayed calm. "No, we had a plan." She folded her arms, speaking like someone explaining a simple strategy. "You've always struggled with anxiety. You've had documented stress issues at work. We were going to build a case that you were mentally unstable." My blood ran cold. "And then what?" I whispered. She held my gaze without flinching. "And then the court would decide the baby would be safer with us." I felt something inside me die completely. Not crack, not shatter, die. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated destruction. They hadn't just stolen my future. They had planned to erase me from it entirely. Daniel looked at her horrified. "You said we weren't going that far," he muttered. She shot him a sharp look. "You agreed to it." His face crumpled. "I thought we would change our minds." But even he knew how weak that sounded. I stared at them both, the two people I once loved most in the world, and suddenly I didn't recognize them at all. They looked like strangers, dangerous strangers. My voice came out quiet, dead calm. "You really believed you would get away with this?"
Alina didn't answer immediately. Then she said softly, "Yes." Silence fell again, heavy, final, and in that silence something shifted inside me, because for the first time since walking into that room, I wasn't thinking about what they had done. I was thinking about what I would do next. A strange calm spread through my chest, cold, precise, like the stillness before a storm. I straightened my shoulders, wiped the last tears from my face, and then I said something that made both of them go very still. "You should have finished the plan." Daniel blinked in confusion. "What?" I looked directly at my sister because she was the one who needed to hear this most. "You should have made sure I never found out." A flicker of unease crossed her expression. "Why would you say that?" I held her gaze, and for the first time that night, I allowed my voice to carry the quiet, terrifying certainty forming inside me. "Because now," I said slowly, "you've made the biggest mistake of your lives." Daniel's face paled. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I was already thinking, already remembering, already piecing together something they hadn't considered, something they had overlooked, something that would change everything. And then I whispered the words that made Alina's confidence crack for the very first time. "You forgot one thing." Her eyes narrowed. "What?" I smiled faintly, not with happiness, but with something far colder. "Plans," I said quietly, "leave evidence." For the first time that night, the power in the room shifted. It was subtle, almost invisible, but I felt it. Alina did too. I could see it in the way her shoulders stiffened just slightly and how her eyes sharpened as she studied my face. She had expected hysteria, breakdown, collapse. Not this. Not calm, not control, and definitely not a warning. "Evidence?" she repeated slowly. Her tone was still steady, but I could hear the tension beneath it. "Yes," I said quietly. I took a step forward, no longer shrinking, no longer trembling. "You spent months planning this, months lying, months manipulating systems, people, records." I held her gaze. "You don't think that leaves a trail?" Daniel swallowed hard. What kind of trail?" he asked, his voice uneasy. I turned to him, and for the first time since everything shattered, I saw him not as the man I loved, but as a weak, frightened stranger who had followed someone darker than himself. "You said you switched the samples," I reminded him. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "That required access to the lab." He nodded. "And you didn't do that yourself." His eyes flickered. "No." "So someone helped you." Silence. Heavy. Damning. I looked back at Alina. "You trusted someone else with this secret." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it, because she couldn't. "You think they'll stay silent forever?" I asked. "You think fear, guilt, or pressure won't make them talk eventually?" For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Just a crack, but it was enough. "You also said," I continued calmly, "that you planned to build a legal case against me." I took another step closer. "That requires documentation, statements, records, communications." Daniel's breathing grew shallow. And that's when I saw it, the realization hitting him, hard, sudden, irreversible. "This isn't just betrayal," I said softly. "This is fraud, medical tampering, identity manipulation, criminal conspiracy." Each word landed like a stone. "And if what you said about that night is true," my voice faltered for just a second, because even saying it out loud felt like reliving it, "then this is something much worse." The silence that followed was suffocating. Alina's face had gone pale, not with guilt, but with calculation. She was thinking fast now, trying to assess risk, trying to regain control. "You don't have proof," she said finally. Her voice was sharp, cold again, but I could hear the tension underneath it. I shook my head slowly. "You're wrong." Daniel's eyes widened. "You do?" he whispered. I met his gaze and said the truth. I don't need proof yet. They both froze. Because now, I said quietly, I know where to look. The air in the room changed instantly. Fear crept in, real fear, not the fear of being exposed emotionally, but the fear of consequences, of law, of reality crashing down. You wouldn't, Alina said. Her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was strained, desperate to sound steady, but failing. You can't just walk away from this. I met her eyes steadily. Watch me. For the first time in my life, she had no response, no argument, no manipulation, because she knew, deep down, this wasn't a fight she could win anymore. Daniel hesitated, his eyes full of regret. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say to him, nothing that mattered, nothing that would change anything. Finally, they left. The sound of the apartment door closing echoed through the silence, and suddenly, I was alone. The quiet that followed felt unreal, heavy, like the air itself was grieving. I sank slowly onto the floor, not because I was weak, but because my body was finally releasing the shock, the adrenaline, the disbelief. And then the tears came, not loud, not dramatic, just silent streams sliding down my face, because the truth had finally settled inside me. Everything I thought was stable, everything I believed was safe, everything I trusted was gone. But beneath the grief, beneath the devastation, something else remained. A small, burning, unbreakable spark. They thought they had erased me. They thought they planned perfectly. They thought they controlled the outcome. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated the one thing they could never control, me. Because as I sat there in the silence, one thought crystallized with absolute clarity. I wasn't just going to survive this, I was going to expose them completely. And I already knew exactly where to start, because there was one place, one moment, one piece of truth they had forgotten existed, and it was about to change everything.
The next morning, sunlight spilled across my apartment, sharp and unforgiving, illuminating the wreckage of the night before. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. My mind was spinning with every detail, every betrayal, every lie. I replayed the ultrasound, the words, their faces, the calm cruelty, the quiet certainty that they believed they were untouchable. But they weren't. Not anymore. I started with the obvious, my phone. Every conversation, every message, every email, every appointment reminder, every text about the doctor visits, every picture shared. I dug like someone hunting for buried treasure, except what I unearthed wasn't gold, it was ammunition, evidence. Alina had been sloppy, not because she wasn't smart, she was brilliant, but because arrogance blinds you. She had assumed I would trust her implicitly. She had assumed I would never question her, and that was the fatal mistake. There were files on the cloud, unprotected backups from the lab they had used, images mislabeled, dates inconsistent, small things that only someone who knew exactly what to look for could notice. And I knew exactly what to look for, because I had seen those ultrasounds, that handwriting, that note, my handwriting. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. For the first time since that night, I felt something resembling control, a dangerous, exhilarating clarity. But the plan had to be precise. I couldn't act rashly. Any mistake would give them leverage. They were cunning, calculating, dangerous. I couldn't let emotion drive me. Not yet. I needed allies. First, the lab techs, people I could trust, people who would never betray me. I made a list of names, reached out one by one, carefully, slowly. I explained the situation, omitting certain details for safety. At first, disbelief met me, but when I mentioned the swap samples and presented the inconsistencies I had already cataloged, the tone changed. Fear crept into their responses. The lab had strict protocols. Violations like this couldn't go unnoticed. Then came Daniel. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I watched, patiently,
carefully. I needed to see how far his guilt went, how complicit he truly was, because Alina had painted him as the perfect accomplice, and maybe he was, but maybe not completely. It didn't take long. He called himself, tentatively, hesitant, his voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. I let the line ring, long enough for him to feel the tension, long enough for him to realize he no longer controlled the conversation. Then I answered, calm, cold. "Meet me at the cafe on 5th and Main, noon." I arrived first, sat at a corner table. The sunlight fell across my notebook, every record, every date, every small inconsistency meticulously documented. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. And when he arrived, I saw it immediately. The guilt, the fear, the understanding that for the first time, he was vulnerable. "Sit," I said. He obeyed, quietly. I opened my notebook, spread the evidence before him, every mislabeled file, every inconsistency, every manipulated appointment. "This," I said, pointing at the evidence, "proves everything." He swallowed hard. I didn't think you'd find out," he whispered. I stared at him, not with anger, not yet, just with cold calculation. "You underestimated me," I said softly, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. It wasn't long before I knew I had him, completely. He wasn't just guilty, he was scared. He knew consequences were coming. He knew exposure would ruin him legally, socially, and emotionally, and I knew I could do it. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted the truth, full transparency, every step they had taken, every person involved, every lie told, and Daniel spilled it all. Alina's plan, her manipulations, every calculated move to erase me, every conversation, every whispered secret, every lie designed to gaslight me. The more he spoke, the clearer the full horror became, and the more dangerous it became for them. After our meeting, I had what I needed, a roadmap, a strategy. It wasn't about rage anymore. Not yet. It was about precision, about exposing them completely, leaving no room for doubt, because by the time Alina realized what I had, it would be too late. The next step was confrontation, direct, public. I didn't send a warning, I didn't give a hint. I just arranged a meeting at the family cabin, the one place that had always felt safe, neutral, away from prying eyes. When they arrived, I was waiting, calm, confident, the notebook in front of me, evidence meticulously organized, ready to present. Alina's confidence wavered the instant she saw the notebook. "You think you can blackmail me?" she sneered, though her voice lacked conviction. "This isn't blackmail," I said quietly. "This is reality, and reality doesn't care about your plans or your lies." Her eyes flicked to Daniel. She expected him to defend her, but he looked down, shame covering his face. "You should have thought about that before everything spiraled out of control," I continued, my tone deliberate, slicing the air like a knife. She stepped closer. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly, coldly. "Regret?" I said. "You've already sown that seed. You don't get to scare me anymore. Not now, not ever." And in that moment, something shifted. The air between us changed. Alina realized, finally, that control was gone. The calculated power she had wielded for months crumbled before my calm, deliberate fury. And I had yet to deliver the final blow. I closed the notebook slowly. "Everything you tried to hide," I said softly, "will be exposed. Every manipulation, every lie, every betrayal, and you won't have a choice in the matter." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Do it then," she said coldly. I leaned back, calm, cold, patient. "Yes," I said, "and when it's over, you'll understand the price of underestimating someone you thought was broken." And just like that, the storm began to form, because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about justice, revenge, and survival.
The cabin was silent except for the crackling of the fire in the stone fireplace. Shadows danced across the walls, throwing distorted shapes that seemed to mimic the chaos in my mind. This was it, the moment I had been building toward for months. Every sleepless night, every secret uncovered, every painful memory had led me here. Alina sat across from me, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp, scanning, trying to anticipate my next move. Daniel was beside her, subdued, guilt etched across every line of his face. He no longer looked like the man I had loved. He looked like a frightened child caught in a storm he couldn't escape. I opened my notebook, laying it flat on the table. Each page contained pieces of our lives, manipulated, hidden, and now fully exposed. Copies of emails, timestamps, appointment records, even lab notes that proved the sample switches. Evidence I had meticulously gathered, cross-checked, and preserved. "You know," I began, my voice quiet but carrying across the room, "when you think someone is broken, when you think they're powerless, you forget one thing. People fight hardest when they've been cornered, and I have been cornered." Alina's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You think you have all the power? You don't understand what's at stake here. Do you really want to ruin yourself?" I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table, my gaze unwavering. "I'm not ruining myself. I'm freeing myself, and anyone who thought they could manipulate me, steal from me, and erase my future will pay the consequences." Daniel swallowed, his hands tightening in his lap. He wanted to speak, to interject, but the weight of guilt had silenced him. His eyes flicked to Alina, then back at me, a silent admission. He knew the truth now. The tension in the room thickened, electric like the moment before a lightning strike. Alina's voice broke the silence, sharp and venomous. "You think this will scare me? You think you can destroy me with a few documents and photos?" I shook my head slowly. "It's not a few documents. It's the proof of every lie you told, every manipulation, every betrayal. And this time, the truth isn't just mine anymore. It's undeniable, public, legal, complete." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time that night, I saw fear, real fear, a flash of vulnerability that she had hidden for months behind her arrogance and confidence. "You won't get away with this," she spat. I smiled faintly, a cold, measured smile. "I already have, because this isn't about what I want to do. It's about what must happen. And the law, the truth, they're on my side, not yours." I watched her closely, noting every twitch, every involuntary movement. The arrogance she had relied on was cracking. It was only a matter of time before she realized that all her careful planning, all her manipulations, were unraveling. "And you, Daniel," I said, turning my gaze to him, "you thought loyalty was optional. You thought hiding the truth, covering for her, would keep you safe. But now, you're just another witness." His shoulders sagged. He tried to meet my eyes, but there was no defense left, only shame, only fear, only the realization that he had been complicit in something monstrous. I took a deep breath, feeling the simmering anger inside me sharpen into clarity. "Everything you did, every single calculated move has left a trail, and I followed it, step by step. Every lie, every false statement, every manipulated moment, I have proof, enough to ensure that no court, no judge, no one in your world will ever believe your story over mine." Her jaw tightened, her nails digging into her palms. "You're bluffing," she hissed. "No, I'm not. I have lab records, emails, texts, witnesses, people you trusted who will testify if necessary. And most importantly, I have the memory of every deceit, every plan, every betrayal that I've documented and preserved. You can't undo that. You can't erase it. You can't rewrite history this time."
Her breathing grew shallow. Her eyes darted nervously, scanning the cabin as if the walls themselves could protect her. "You won't do it," she whispered, almost to herself. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a controlled whisper, sharp as a knife. "Watch me, Alina, because the difference between me and you is that I fight for justice, not power. I don't manipulate, I don't steal, I don't lie, I expose. And tonight, this ends, one way or another." Daniel flinched. He realized fully that the woman he had helped betray was no longer fragile, no longer emotional. She was dangerous, but not in the way he feared, dangerous in a way that was precise, unstoppable, and morally justified. I opened my notebook, laying it flat on the table. Each page contained pieces of our lives, manipulated, hidden, and now fully exposed. Copies of emails, timestamps, appointment records, even lab notes that proved the sample switches. Evidence I had meticulously gathered, cross-checked, and preserved. "You both underestimated me," I said softly. "You thought my grief and shock would render me powerless, that I'd crumble, that I'd retreat. You were wrong. I've been planning too, silently, carefully, relentlessly. Every step you took to control the narrative, I anticipated. And now the game ends with me on top." Alina's face had gone pale. "You think you've won?" I smiled coldly. "I know I have, because truth always wins in the end, and you thought you could rewrite it." Her lips parted, but no words came. She realized that every possible escape, every manipulation, every hidden agenda had been anticipated and neutralized. She had no control. She had nothing. The tension broke like a snapped wire, and in that moment, the reality of their defeat hit them both. Daniel's shoulders slumped. Alina's eyes glistened with a mix of fear, shame, and disbelief. I stood slowly, gathering the notebook and the evidence within it, each page a reminder of betrayal, each document a shield against lies. "This ends tonight," I said firmly. "The truth will come out, you will face the consequences, and I will survive." As they sat in stunned silence, I stepped toward the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The weight of justice, the clarity of truth, the precision of planning had already sealed the outcome. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees around the cabin. A storm was coming, literal and metaphorical. But I wasn't afraid. I had weathered the first storm, and I was ready for the next. Because after all the lies, all the manipulations, all the betrayals, I had reclaimed control. I had reclaimed my life, and nothing they could do would ever take it from me again. I paused at the threshold, feeling the cold air on my face. And in that moment, I knew the hardest part was yet to come, not exposing them, not fighting for justice, but rebuilding myself. Because betrayal leaves scars, deep, invisible scars that take more than time to heal. But for the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope, a spark that told me I would survive. Not just survive, but rise, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. And somewhere deep inside, I smiled, because I knew without a doubt that this story, the story of betrayal, lies, and manipulation, was far from over. It was only beginning.
The weeks that followed were a blur of strategy, confrontation, and painstaking preparation. I had no choice but to become meticulous, methodical, and mercilessly precise. Each piece of evidence I collected, the lab records, the text messages, the appointment logs, was like a weapon, a sword I could wield against the people who had tried to destroy me. But this wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about making them pay in the way they had imagined. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. I had been violated, manipulated, and deceived in ways I never thought possible, and I refused to be silent. The first step was legal. I met with lawyers who specialized in medical fraud, emotional abuse, and family law. They listened with wide eyes as I explained the details, how the samples were switched, the complicity of Daniel and Alina's manipulations. At first, some of it sounded almost surreal to them, but when I produced the documents, emails, and records, the weight of evidence was undeniable. Your sister and your ex-fiancé knowingly tampered with medical records, one of the attorneys asked, incredulous. This is massive. You could pursue criminal charges, civil claims, everything. I nodded. I intend to. Everything they've done has consequences. They need to understand that actions like this can't be hidden forever. Then came the harder part, the emotional confrontation. I couldn't just win in court or on paper. I needed closure. I needed to confront the people who had destroyed my trust, face them directly, and reclaim my narrative. I arranged a meeting at the local park, neutral ground, where the public nature would prevent any impulsive violence or manipulation. Daniel arrived first, hesitant, shoulders slumped. Alina followed, her confident facade cracking slightly under the weight of her guilt and fear. I stood in front of them, calm, measured, and unyielding. "This is it," I said quietly. "The truth has been uncovered. Everything you tried to hide is now exposed, and I will make sure the world knows exactly what happened." Alina's lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't understand. I was justified. You had everything. Why shouldn't I take what was mine?" I shook my head slowly, the cold fire of truth in my eyes. Nothing justifies what you did. Nothing justifies stealing a child, manipulating someone you claim to love, or betraying the one person who trusted you above all else. Justice isn't about fairness in your mind, it's about accountability, and you are accountable. Daniel's eyes filled with shame. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." His voice cracked. "I never wanted to hurt you this badly." I looked at him steadily. "But you did. You enabled it. You didn't stop it. And now you have to face the consequences." For the first time, they were silent. Not the cold, manipulative silence of before, not the arrogant, calculated silence that had masked their plotting. This was the silence of fear, the realization that their control was gone forever. Over the following days, I moved carefully. I involved authorities. I documented every interaction, every confession, every proof. Each step reinforced my position. Every move was deliberate, measured, and unassailable. It wasn't easy. The betrayal had left scars deeper than I expected. Nights were long, filled with memories that clawed at my mind. The ultrasound, the stolen moments, the whispered lies, all of it haunted me. But I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I channeled my pain into action, into strategy, into reclaiming my life. The emotional weight of confronting Alina and Daniel in court was heavier than anything I had ever endured. But as the hearings progressed, I realized something vital. I had grown stronger through this process. Not invincible, not untouched, but stronger in a way I could never have imagined before the betrayal. With each testimony, each piece of evidence presented, I felt the power shift. The judges saw the truth. The witnesses corroborated the events.
Even the public, who once only saw my vulnerability, now witnessed the strength I had forged through pain. And then the final day came. Alina and Daniel sat across from me, stripped of the manipulation, stripped of the arrogance, stripped of the illusions they had used to control me. The verdicts were pronounced. The consequences for their actions were real. Legal accountability, restitution, and the full weight of justice had been applied. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I simply allowed myself to breathe. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. And I had survived. Walking away from the courthouse, I felt the weight of the months lift. For the first time, I felt clarity. I had faced the people who had betrayed me in the most intimate and devastating ways imaginable. I had reclaimed control over my life, my narrative, and my future. And I learned a truth far more valuable than any legal victory. No one has the right to determine your worth, your identity, or your destiny. That power lies only with you. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. Therapy helped me process the trauma. Friends and family who truly cared became my anchor. I reconnected with parts of myself that I had buried under the weight of betrayal. And slowly, painfully, I began to trust again, not blindly, but cautiously, wisely, with discernment. I also realized something important about resilience. Betrayal can break you, it can warp your perception of the world, but it can also illuminate your strength. I had been betrayed by the people I loved most, and yet I emerged with clarity, focus, and an unshakable commitment to justice. There is power in surviving the unthinkable. There is freedom in reclaiming control, and there is triumph in knowing that truth, patience, and resilience can overcome even the most calculated betrayals. Today, I live cautiously but freely. I share my story not to harm, not to vilify, but to warn, to inspire, and to remind others that betrayal is never the end of your story. It is a painful chapter, yes, but it can also be the turning point, the moment when you discover your own strength, your own voice, your own unbreakable will. I learned that love, even when twisted by deceit, cannot be used as a weapon to erase you unless you allow it. And I refused. I refused to allow their lies to define me. Their betrayal did not destroy me, it refined me. And finally, the moral of this story is simple. Trust but verify. Protect yourself. Observe, question, and never let anyone make you doubt your own instincts. Family can betray, friends can deceive, partners can manipulate, but you, your intuition, your courage, your persistence are yours alone. That is where real power lies. I rebuilt my life from the wreckage, slowly, carefully, deliberately. And every day I remind myself of what I endured and how I survived. Because survival is victory, truth is power, and no one, not even the ones you love the most, can take that from you unless you allow it. I am free now, and I will never let anyone control my story again.